Jonathan Keren-Black. Many of you know me, I know you, and we are delighted to welcome you here to this afternoon's proceedings, the annual general meeting of the Council of Christians and Jews of Victoria. I thank Alex for asking me to chair, and he is going to introduce us.
Yes, so hello, as Jonathan said, as most of you know, my name is Alex. I'm the chair of the Council of Christians and Jews, and thank you and welcome for joining us at the annual general meeting. The first one we've had in person since 2019, so it's great that you're all here. It's great that we have Vivienne, our guest speaker, here as well, so thank you for being here as well, thank you. Thank you for everyone else. Let me begin by acknowledging the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as the first peoples of Australia, the traditional owners and original custodians of the lands and waters throughout Australia. I want to pay tribute to their continuing connection to land, waters and community, and pay my respects to their people, their culture, their elders, present, past and emerging. Let me first introduce Jonathan, who's been the rabbi here at Leo Baeck Centre for Progressive Judaism since 2003, and if I'm not mistaken, this is his final year as rabbi here, so he may take the opportunity to say a few words about his time here as well. So let me pass on to Jonathan, and then you'll come back to me shortly.
Well, thank you very much, Alex, and thank you for the honour of chairing this meeting. Welcome to all of you as our honoured guests, and some of you may be here for the first time, and some of you may have been here many times, even, dare I say, regularly. I want to acknowledge Rabbi Fred Morgan, particularly as my colleague here this afternoon. And really that's a general welcome to everybody. As you've just heard, this is my final year. I've been at Leo Baeck since 2003, so I will have completed 20 years by the end of this year, which seems like a long time when you count the number of mitzvahs, and weddings, and funerals, and it's a long time. But I am delighted. It's the first time I think we've hosted the AGM since I've been here, and it's lovely to do that, and it's great to have the opportunity to welcome you. We do all sorts of things for congregations, ministers and rabbis, including running around and finding extension leads and often drawing blood. And sucking the drops of blood off me. Just worth mentioning that I was at an Orthodox Jewish school, and of course you're not allowed to eat blood. Jews are strictly prohibited from eating blood. Right, it's the very first rule of kosher, I think, really, that the blood is the lifeblood of an animal, and you eat life of an animal, and you should pour it on the ground and cover it over, and you shouldn't eat blood. So I was the student in the religious studies class who stayed awake and asked difficult questions when everybody else didn't. And so I asked Reverend Camisar, I said, you're not allowed to eat blood. He said, that's right. I said, does that include your own blood? He said, that's right. I said, what happens if you've got a tooth bleeding? And he said, oh, you can eat that. It's okay as long as it hasn't left your body. So apparently I shouldn't be licking my fingers. Stop bleeding there, that's a miracle. Good. I would like to just say a word about masks. There are masks available, and we produced masks which say proudly vaccinated. If you would like one, there's some in the foyer still left. We do encourage you still to wear masks. We're clearly in a difficult period still. COVID is still rampant, and we space the chairs and we space the rows, and we've got fresh air. Supposedly that door should be open, but still people sit next to each other. So feel free to wear a mask if you would like to. I don't when I'm up here unless there's somebody else up here with me. Then I want to say our newsletter is called Profile, because there always is a profile of one of our congregants in it, so we get to know each other. And this is hot off the press. This is literally hot off the press. I just printed it. But it is waiting to be posted on Monday morning. So if you want to see what's happening in our congregation over the coming 3 months, which includes the High Holy Days, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Shmini Atzeret, Simchat Torah, then please pick up a copy and see what's happening. You're very welcome there on the table in the foyer. Good. And brief prayer. My prayer today is for understanding and harmony in our world, which struggles so much. I had a Monique Ryan banner up outside our house during the election campaign. I have had such nasty, virulent letters through the letterbox posted to us, and apparently, I don't know if you're aware of this, but apparently anybody who supported the independents, Zoe Daniels and Monique Ryan, somebody's gone round and written down the addresses of everybody who was putting up a banner, a poster, and has been sending nasty letters, and signed by the Aryan nation. You know, they know where we live, they know where we get our car serviced, and be warned. It's been to the police, it's been to Dvir Abramovich, but it was actually Monique Ryan's office that told me that it's been very widely circulated. But you know, we live in times which are challenging wherever in the world we look, for one reason or another, often for many reasons. And so I would say, Adonai Oz le'amo yiten, Adonai yivarech et hamo v'shalom. May the Spirit of the universe be the source of inspiration and courage and hope for all of us to work towards a time of peace and harmony and kindness, compassion, forgiveness and understanding. And I'm sure that the CCJ will join me in that prayer. Amen.
Jonathan. Thank you, Rabbi Jonathan, for sharing so ably, and good luck in your the next part of your life and your career beyond the rabbi, being the rabbi at the synagogue. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce the Sister Shirley Sedawie Oration. This has been an annual part of the AGM for many years, and I'm very delighted that our speaker today is Vivienne Nguyen AM. As you see from the picture and in general, I first met Vivienne at a Jewish Vietnamese appreciation dinner, and we keep bumping into each other many times since then. I think this is at least the 4th synagogue that I've seen you at in the last few years. So welcome to this one, and welcome in general to our AGM. As a formal introduction, let me read part of Vivienne's CV, which says, Vivienne's greatest talent is continuing what she started soon after arriving in Australia as a 12-year-old refugee, which is being a passionate advocate for genuine community engagement and cultural diversity. For over 25 years, Vivienne has been a leader in corporate, community and government settings, applying her business knowledge and technical expertise to work with community organisations to advance their social objectives. She held roles at Ostchoice Financial Services, AMP Asset Management and ANZ Banking Group, where she led their global diversity strategy. At the community level, she led the Vietnamese community in Australia's Victorian chapter from 2015 to 2019, where she ran the Vietnamese Australian Museum project and strengthened the Dual Identity Leadership Program. She was appointed VMC Chairperson in 2019. In 2002, Viv was inducted into the Victorian Honour Roll for advocating for women's leadership and supporting young Vietnamese people. In 2003, she was awarded a Centenary Medal, and in 2021, she was awarded the Australian Order in the AM Division for advancing multicultural Victoria. Without further ado, I'd like to invite Vivienne Nguyen AM to deliver the Shirley Sedawie Oration on the topic of perspectives for meetings with multicultural and multifaith communities. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Alex, and good afternoon, everyone. Let me also start by paying my respects to the traditional owners of the land on which I speak with you this afternoon, the Wurundjeri people, and I pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and their culture. I also like to extend my respect to any Aboriginal persons joining us this afternoon. For many of you, and as you probably know about the Victorian Multicultural Commission, we are a statutory body that celebrates, advocates for and promotes cultural diversity in Victoria and across all levels of government. On behalf of the VMC, I thank the Council of Christians and Jews for inviting me to deliver the Shirley Sedawie annual lecture. Let me also acknowledge the CCJ's Chair, Alex Katz, Vice Chair Mark Walsh, Rabbi Jonathan Keren-Black, and from the Leo Baeck Centre, Rabbi Fred Morgan, Honorary President, Mike Zafros from Courage to Care, past chairs, honorary presidents, sisters, and a special acknowledgement to Walter Rappaport and Sandy, who was a former commissioner for the Victorian Multicultural Commission and who is a great friend of mine, teaching me a lot about the Jewish community and the Jewish faith. You've asked me to talk a little bit about me and my faith and the impact that it has on me as a person and the role of multi-faith in the Victorian Multicultural Commission. So I'll focus on those, and I think my speech is about 15 minutes. I hope that's okay, Alex, not too long. First, let me talk a little bit about me and my faith as a Catholic. My early memory of faith was a really pure one, and I hope it still remains pure as of today, 50 years old. My auntie, my dad's youngest sister, was a Catholic nun, and my early memory of her, I saw her as an angel, someone beautiful, elegant, and so eloquent that I really wanted to be a nun like her. And so I brought along that little photo. Here it is. That's Auntie Jan, and that's me at the age of 6. And that was one of the very few photos that I brought along when I left the country on a boat as part of the whole refugee and boat people movement in the 80s from following the end of the Vietnam War. So again, following the end of that war, Auntie Jan, the nun, she left the convent, as many things happened after the war where certain things didn't continue anymore, and the closure of convents was one of those things. So Auntie Jan left home, left the convent and lived with us, where she was so strict with me, like making me get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to attend the daily Catholic Mass. That was when I realized that being a nun wasn't my calling. And it still isn't my calling, clearly. It was too hard getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning every day to attend the daily Mass before everything started. But my life in the early days in Australia was also very heavily connected with my faith. I went to the local church every day, joined the choir of the Legion of Mary youth group, and in fact this practice was at home in Vietnam, and at the same time at the refugee camp where I spent a year in Malaysia as a youth leader for the Catholic group. My family is a traditional Catholic family. My dad was a long-standing leader in the Catholic youth movement, and we have a family of 6. My 2 older brothers and sisters were either executive members or volunteers in the local parishes here in Victoria, and my 2 other sisters and I have been members of the Legion of Mary in Flemington for many years. What faith has taught me is the immovable sense of reliance, that God would not betray me or desert me. In many difficult times of my life, and I suppose in relative terms, my life hasn't been that difficult, notwithstanding the refugee experience that I've had. But particularly when one of the difficult times of my life was when my little Fraser, my second son, was diagnosed with autism. I had actually called God many times, and I said, and I actually complained, literally, and I said to him that I've done so many good things, like joining the Legion of Mary, being a good, young woman, doing all of the right things, attending church every Sunday. Why did he give me this? I did not deserve having a child with autism. And I actually complained, I kid you not, I complained every day, like, what's going on? Type approach. But what I realized eventually was the level of joy I received for each very little thing Fraser has achieved. And these moments that I have received and am continuing to receive are those I've never had before I had Fraser. And I had Fraser at the age of 39. Faith gives me perspectives, and it is that perspective that I relied on that kept me going during the pandemic, and like many of us here, to see through every day. And there were indeed some very difficult days and moments when I met with the communities or took part in delivering food parcels or talking to those people who were in very, very difficult situations. That's what life and that's what faith is or means to me. So in my role now as Chairperson of the Victorian Multicultural Commission, I'm proud and humbled to lead the VMC in connecting the many multicultural communities in Victoria, of which I am also a part. I see my leadership role as Chairperson as fulfilling a greater purpose, something I believe have common with Sister Shirley. Sister Shirley Sedawie, as you know, built bridges of understanding between Christians and Jews after the World War II, and was a co-founder of the Council of Christians and Jews Victoria. All those years ago, Sister Shirley clearly saw the importance of interfaith dialogue and understanding. It is especially poignant that the kind of compassion and connection that Sister Shirley showed and inspired in others arose from the aftermath of a truly dark time. The Holocaust was and continues to be a blight on the world's history pages, and its impact will continue to be felt by those most severely and directly affected, their families and communities. Whilst it is painful and the impact of it continues to be felt, and that we should not and must not forget, but that we, all of us, never stop focusing on what unites us, and there are many reasons that can unite us rather than things that divide us. And now, thanks to the very large part of Sister Shirley, the CCJ is here to help us to do just that. I commend the Council of Christians and Jews for establishing this annual lecture in Sister Shirley's honour, and the VMC recognises the important role she played in initiating interfaith dialogue here in Victoria and beyond. If I may also briefly acknowledge two other people like Sister Shirley who played an incredibly important role in the interfaith dialogue, who has sadly passed away in recent time. First is Professor Gary Boomer. This past Sunday, members of the Multifaith Advisory Group, which I chair, held a one-year anniversary memorial of his work. Professor Boomer contributed so much to the interfaith dialogue and understanding, not only here in Victoria and Australia, but globally too. He was one of the founding and most active members of the VMC's Faith Advisory Group, sharing his sharp intellect, good humour, and the ability to tell it like it is and make friends along the way. The other person I'd like to honour is Yasser Solomon, the past president of the Islamic Council of Victoria and former Victorian Multicultural Commissioner, who also sadly passed away a few weeks ago. Yasser was another transformative individual who was genuinely committed to interfaith dialogue and understanding. He was the president of the Islamic Council of Victoria when 9/11 occurred and played an incredibly important role in the subsequent days, months and years. Dealing with an aftermath in the most humble way, Yasser provided reassurance to the Australia's Muslim community whilst engaging in international community through the media. Sister Shirley, Gary and Yasser, and many others, including many of you here in this room, have played an important role, often unheralded, in a society that is as culturally and as religiously diverse as ours. This diversity is increasingly evolving every day, a fact that was especially evident in our most recent nationwide census. As an example, Victoria is home to 6.5 million people who speak 290 languages and come from 314 ancestries. Beyond being a defining factor of where we live, our cultural diversity is also one of our greatest assets. And with that comes the need for careful and sensitive attention to support and nurture this gift rather than see it as dividing us. And it cannot be taken for granted nor ignored. This is especially important when we consider the painful ripples that overseas conflicts and disasters can create on our local communities. For all who serve their community, It is our responsibility to lead the way in breaking down stereotypes, preventing racism and vilification, and in ensuring that all marginalized voices are heard. They especially must be heard by those making decisions that affect us. And we heard that from the Rabbi just before about the tensions for when we supported independent members here in the recent federal election. This is something that evidently came naturally to Sister Shirley, and I'm sure when she would agree that to honour her is to continue to lead with empathy, understanding and strength. I would have liked to meet Sister Shirley myself, and I think we could have had wonderful and robust conversations, and I would have loved to stand beside her in her advocacy and as an ally. Every member of our community deserves to reach their potential and participate in all aspects of our society, irrespective of our culture, religious or spiritual background, or skin colour, gender, disability or any other attributes. Some might see this as an ambitious task for everyone to reach their potential, but I see it as critical to our social cohesion and the key to our collective potential as human beings. It may sound dramatic, but it has never been more urgent a task that we need to come together and raise each other up rather than bringing each other down. That is why building interfaith and multifaith dialogue, understanding and respect is so paramount. This dialogue is something that the VMC is proud to facilitate through our multi-faith advisory group. The MAG is an advisory body which represents the voices of many of Victoria's faith leaders to the Victorian government through the VMC. One of its objectives is to respond to recommendations from the 2007 Premier's Multi-Faith Leaders Forum and build and meet regularly as a medium to increase diversity and discuss emerging issues to more proactively addressing them. Over time, the MAG has been incredibly important in both responding to issues arising from within the community and in liaising with government departments on legislations, policies and programs such as prevention of family violence, legislative changes such as the religious vilification and COVID-19 protocols for places of worship. The MAG also issues statements promoting harmony and in response to overseas tragedies and conflicts. And the MAG isn't the only medium through which interfaith and multi-faith dialogue occurs here within Victoria. This council, the Council of Christians and Jews in Victoria, was established in 1985 to do just that. The Jewish Christian Muslim Association, the Faith Communities Council of Victoria, Religions for Peace, Australian Partnership of Religious Organisations, and that's just to name a few, who all have played a significant role in this dialogue. And over the past few decades, dozens of local interfaith networks established. The VMC has been amazed and inspired to witness the incredible work they do at local level and appreciate the work done by their committees and in many cases, the local governments who support them. This work extends from Bendigo to Ballarat, Wyndham to Hume, from Monash to Moreland to Frankston and Casey, and from Gippsland to Shepparton to Geelong and to Loddon Campaspe. These interfaith networks evolve naturally over time as our diversity has increased along with the need for enhanced understanding. We of course have faced various challenges in the past and will continue to do so in the future. At a local level, it's been identified that religious and racial vilification is clearly still rife. The 2021 Scanlon Foundation survey report on social cohesion highlighted this. 60% of its survey respondents stated that racism is an issue in Australia. That represents 20% increase from the previous year's survey. However, the survey also highlights some hopeful findings. As an example, 86% of respondents stated that multiculturalism has been good for Australia. This statistic has remained consistently high throughout the life of the survey. So the challenge for us that remain is to continue to promote dialogue, understanding and social cohesion whilst being bold enough to address racism and vilification that still exists. This is not an easy feat, but it certainly pays tribute to the courage of Sister Shirley. Leadership is important, dialogue is important, and respect for each other is important. I'd like to finish by quoting one of the MAG's recent statements, for I believe it captures what MAG and other interfaith networks are endeavouring to work on. We chose to love, not hate. We choose to live and not forgive. We choose to understand rather than rush to judge. In our global media world, bad news of any kind travels quickly to us. Our task as faith leaders is to prevent it infecting our relationships with one another. And sometimes this is very hard. But we know the history of the global centuries means it is still fragile and can be easily disrupted. We know we need each other's understanding about these dynamics of community life. We know we need to keep in dialogue so we reach a place which not only gives us all a peaceful integrity, but also aspires for a greater collective good. We want to keep fostering together in Victoria a culture that is loving, respectful, forgiving and understanding. We have not yet reached the place that we want to reach. We are on a journey. I am grateful for the opportunity to join you today on this important occasion to celebrate the life of Sister Shirley. I thank her for her vision and lasting impact, and thank the Council of Christians and Jews for your leadership in ensuring her legacy lives on and the impact of her work continues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vivienne. I hope you don't mind if maybe there's some questions from the audience, if anyone has any. I just want to reiterate that we set up the Shirley Sedawie Oration after her passing for exactly the reasons that Vivienne just outlined, because she was a true visionary in our community, and it's great to have others like Vivienne to carry on some of that legacy.
When you began your 15 minutes, you referenced both the words multi-faith and multicultural, because of course the VMC is multiculturalism. And a lot of people don't always appreciate the nuances there, or if there even should be one. So I come at it from a particular perspective because I've done a lot of work with First Nations Australians who actually regard their Aboriginality as their faith, as their spirituality. Of course, many having had ancestors grow up on missions, and so the influence of Christianity is huge. Is there a place in your mind, in your world experience of this travel, for Aboriginal spirituality to be part of multi-faith? Because it's not really considered like that, and I know some First Nations people who would like to see that change.
Thank you, Evan. It is good to see you again and for your active participation and contribution in the multicultural and multi-faith community. For me, to have social cohesion, for us to be able to live together and respect each other, accept each other for what is common to us, such as various values about respect in others, but also respect each other's differences and embrace those differences rather than being fearful of those differences. I see First Nations peoples as something that is unique to this country, and they are not on the same pace or on the same page as us. In fact, they are literally above us, if you like. So that is why it's important for the multicultural and multi-faith community to continue to be more aware, more understanding, more educated of the colonisation, the pain and the suffering that the First Nations people have experienced, and the way in which they take custody of the land and the waters that we live on every day. So in that respect, I think for me it is a different thing, and it is something that we need to learn more and be special. Not that we are not special, but I think for us we are the recipients of what the First Nations people have protected and defended for us.
I think it'd be interesting if you could just give us a few topics that are preoccupying the VMC at the moment. What are the issues that you're working through? I'm also aware that we're leading up to an election, and I wonder if that impinges on what you're looking at.
Thank you. In terms of the issues that preoccupies the VMC, at a policy level, there are a couple, or in fact there are three, and we've been working through that both internally and external advocacy, and they are employment, particularly employment for women. and particularly for employment for women who have large families or who are single parents who have a number of school-aged children. The other thing is family violence. We think that after 5th or 6th or 7th year into the 10 year since the Royal Commission into family violence, there are still the multicultural and multi-faith communities are still not able to access or are made aware of the services adequately. An example of that is when we think about specialist services for people from the multicultural and multi-faith community, we think of In Touch. Whereas when for if I could just use the term, a mainstream person, there are many service providers that a person could reach out and receive support from. And the third one is the mental health. And it is mental health because the report, the Royal Commission report, has just been handed down in recent times. And in comparison to the family violence report, it is a lot more high level, which means that it has something like 60 recommendations versus 250 or 300 recommendations from the family violence report, which means that we need to unpack that report a lot more and work out how the multicultural communities can be involved and can be engaged in that. And that's one of our key challenges at the moment, to be honest, because of the way in which government sees how things should operate. In terms of the election and the upcoming election, as a statutory body, we are not involved in publicly advocating for or create platforms for people to raise issues around the election. The Ethnic Communities Council of Victoria does and can do that, or any other organisation in the community can and should do that as part of our civic engagement and as part of our democratic right, including this organisation.
Thank you, and that I'm sure keeps you very busy. Yes?
Thank you very much, Vivienne. As the Sister of Our Lady of Zion, I think I could speak a little in Shirley's name and say how proud she would be to see you standing there and acknowledging her role, interlinking with your role. So thank you very much for your talk. I'm wondering whether you have any response in terms of the issue of protecting our whole environment. It is a multi-faith and a multicultural issue, a worldwide issue. And I just wonder whether you have any comment to say about that and to maybe call us all to a commitment in that area. Thank you.
When you say protecting, can I just get a bit more understanding of what that means?
Well, our response to the current environmental issues, so I suppose I mean protecting in minor ways and in major ways that we can. You know, it might be as small as recycling, it might be other major policy issues, but just how do we respond collectively as faith and cultural communities?
Thank you for that. The issue of the environment and recycling and protecting our environment, whilst it seems like an obvious one, it can be quite challenging when we dig a bit deeper. And especially when we heard, from the latest ABS census that we have 314 ancestries and 340 languages, and we come to Australia at different stages. Things can be straightforward from what I can see. However, it can be quite difficult for another group of people. I believe our commitment is to ensure that everyone is made aware of the benefits of both in the short term and in the long term, and support them in the short term for them to be able to understand more about what's required, so that they can then be on, if I could use that term, on the same page and actually be able to commit to protecting our environment a lot more. The same thing applies, you would have seen throughout the pandemic. We might say that, we listen to the Premier and the press conference every day and we automatically understand what the Premier wanted us to do. But for many other communities, that's not necessarily the case. And it's not because they cannot read English or listen to or cannot understand English. It's because they may have other priorities, such as working or running around chasing their kids and making sure that they have breakfast and all those things, that they don't get to sit there and watch the premiere. And so they miss out on what the latest developments or the latest compliance requirements could be, and they need to be communicated in some other ways. So I think for me, this commitment to ongoing education and raising the awareness of our environment, the same applies to First Nations people. The same applies to civic engagement, and the same applies to participation in our democratic society for all of us. Because without that commitment to ongoing education, someone will be left behind, and that's not what we want for in a society like ours, or for humanity, or something that Sister Shirley would have wanted us to do.
Thank you very much. I think that's very true. So if I could ask Rabbi Jonathan to come up as well. We have a gift for both of you. Let me first. Oh, okay. Well, we can present it to you anyway, and then you can tell me later. So this is a gift for Vivienne, and a gift for Rabbi Jonathan as well for chairing our AGM. Thank you so much. Thank you to both of you. And that concludes our AGM. That concludes our oration. If you're saying, so Vivienne's around if anyone has any personal questions. But I invite everyone into the other room for refreshments. Thank you very much.